Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Sandra Lowe, Medical Director of the World Trade Center Mental Health Program here at the Mount Sinai CCE. And welcome to our third and final session of the Promoting Cognitive Health series. Today, we're going to be speaking about lifestyle and cognition. I am very pleased to once again be joined by Dr. Esther McBirney-Goc, who is Assistant Director of Clinical Psychology at our program. She brings a wealth of experience in cognitive health, and we are very privileged to have her lead this series. Before we get started, I do want to mention that we will have a question and answer period at the end of the webinar, the last few minutes. So please post your questions in the chat, and we'll be able to get to them at that point. There will also be a very brief survey. The link will be shared near the end of the webinar, and we would love to hear your feedback. Okay, so why don't we start by taking a look at how today's session fits into the series. So over the past several years, many of our program members have shared concerns about their memory. This series grew in response to those concerns, and it really reflects our commitment to sharing as much as we know about lifestyle factors, physical health, mental health, and stress, and how they affect cognition. We also make it a point to share factors that steps that you can take to help you maximize your cognitive health. In our first webinar, we focused on physical health, the importance of caring for your medical conditions. And second, we explored how chronic stress and untreated mental health conditions really take a toll on our cognitive well-being. Today, we're going to take a look at lifestyle, including sleep, diet, activity, substance use, social connection, and cognitive engagement, and put together how these daily habits affect your cognitive health over time. We are going to offer you some research-based guidance to help you on your journey to try and improve your cognitive health. And we hope to leave you with some practical steps and one SMART goal. And Dr. McBirney-Goc will talk a little bit later on exactly what that means. So let's begin with why lifestyle, that is, how we live our lives and what we do every day, matters. So when we talk about daily habits, we're talking about the small routines that influence how we feel, how we think, and how we function. These daily habits are what shape our well-being. They determine how much energy we have during the day, our mood. They, of course, affect our sleep and our level of fatigue, and they have a strong effect on our mental clarity. Now, we are all prone to falling into some unhealthy habits over time, often triggered by some personal or even broader stress in the world. However, when these unhealthy patterns like poor diet or poor sleep, physical inactivity, excess alcohol use, smoking, or withdrawing socially, when these become patterns that are continued, they all contribute to cognitive decline. We're going to be speaking about making changes, and I know that that can feel overwhelming. And we're going to be talking about a number of factors: sleep, activity, nutrition, substances. So what I encourage you to do is, as you listen along, just pick one of these areas that you would like to focus on and perhaps make a small change in, and think about a realistic goal that you can set as we go along. Now, before we talk about change, let's let's take a look at what we mean by cognition and by cognitive health. Now, when we say cognition, what we're talking about is your brain's core skills. These are what allow us to make everyday decisions and to problem solve. The core skills include memory, attention, focus, our ability to process information, as well as our ability to reason. These really help guide what we do every day. They help us remember to take our medication. They help us to plan for things ahead of time. They're critical for handling finances and even for staying socially engaged. Now, we are aware that many 9/11 responders have shared cognitive concerns. And many of these responders are individuals who have medical and mental health conditions. I encourage you to share these with your medical team. They can try and figure out what may be causing your particular symptoms. Often it is untreated conditions. Fortunately, care is available here at our program for 9/11 related conditions. And in addition to that, we will share some lifestyle changes that you can make that make a significant difference. So with that in mind, let's take a look at normal aging and something you may have heard of called cognitive impairment. So many members have asked, is what I'm noticing in my memory normal aging, or is it actually something else, something that I should be worried about? Well, occasional forgetfulness, slower recall, forgetting names can be a normal part of aging. I have many times walked into a room and have no clue why I actually walked into that room. That's part of us getting older, and it generally is normal. Now, on the other hand, MCI, or mild cognitive impairment, refers to some noticeable changes in your cognitive abilities that go beyond what we see in normal aging. However, these tend not to interfere in any significant way with your daily life. Keep in mind, this is not dementia. It is very different from dementia. However, it is a sign for you to attend to and to address and maybe make some changes. Now, the course for MCI varies from person to person depending on the cause, and it can stabilize over time, that is, stay the same. It can improve with care and with lifestyle changes, or it can progress and require more targeted attention. The good news is that the brain remains remarkably adaptable. It is resilient and it can recover throughout our lives. And there are steps that you can take to support your cognitive health at any age. The strategies that we're going to share today are going to support cognitive function for everyone, regardless of the cause, whether it's MCI, whether it's another health condition, but they're also going to help if you just want to stay mentally sharp. So with that foundation, I am now going to turn it over to Dr. Esther McBirney-Goc to walk us through sleep, nutrition, physical activity, and discuss how what you do in those areas, what habits you have, can actually help protect your brain health.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe, and thank you to all the members who've joined us here today. So the first lifestyle factor we're going to discuss is sleep, which is a major contributor to our cognitive well-being. Getting adequate sleep is integral to our cognitive abilities. It's our brain's way of recovering and consolidating information and memory. Not only is sleep required for our brain's health, but poor sleep also increases the likelihood of developing mental and medical health conditions that have a negative impact on our brains. Although there can be variation between people and their sleep needs, on average, most adults need about 7 hours of sleep each night for optimal functioning. Just as important as sleep duration is sleep quality. A long sleep that is poor in quality likely will not be sufficient for what our brains and bodies need over the course of the day. Things like untreated sleep apnea or nightmares can contribute to disrupted sleep and therefore lower the quality of the sleep that we are getting. Getting treatments for these sorts of difficulties can improve the quality of our sleep and thereby benefit our brains. We noted in our webinar 2 weeks ago that it's not uncommon for individuals to use substances such as alcohol to unwind. And it's true that for some people, drinking or using other substances may help them fall asleep faster. But unfortunately, when we use substances before bed, it actually lowers the quality of our sleep. And so our brains can't actually benefit from sleep when we're under the influence of substances in the way that it would if we fell asleep naturally. So what can we do? One of the things that we can do is to really work on our sleep hygiene. These are behavioral changes that we can make to improve both the duration and the quality of our sleep. A lot of them sound pretty straightforward, but they can be a little bit hard to put into practice. So we'll give some ideas of how to address them in a bit. So things that you can do to improve your sleep. It's important to go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. So trying to be consistent between days, weekdays and weekends, having a consistent, go to bed and wake time can be very useful. It's good to exercise regularly earlier in the day. That can help us feel tired when it is time to sleep, but try to avoid heavy exercise for about 3 hours before bed because exercise tends to make us energized in a way that makes it harder to fall asleep. So you want to make sure you're exercising earlier in the day, but about 3 hours before bed, no heavy exercise. You want to try to avoid naps, especially in the afternoon and evening. It's very common that if you're having trouble sleeping at night, there's a great temptation to grab that nap during the day. Unfortunately, that can further the cycle of difficulty sleeping at night. So for example, if by 2 or 3 p.m. you're so tired that you fall asleep for an hour, it might actually make it harder for you to sleep again that evening. So if there's a way to push through past the nap and get to your usual nighttime sleep, that can be really useful. It's also really important to try to avoid screens for at least 30 to 60 minutes before bed. This is for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that the light given off by the screen can confuse your body and make your body feel like it's awake time when really you're trying to get ready for rest. And another major thing to think about is most of the time when we're watching something on a screen, it's not particularly soothing, and that can also make it harder for us to fall asleep. So if you can turn off the TV or put down the tablet or the phone for about 30 to 60 minutes before bed, that can be incredibly useful. You also want to try to avoid caffeine for at least 6 hours before bed. Minimize heavy meals and alcohol right before bed. Again, as I mentioned before, alcohol might help you fall asleep, but since it lowers the quality of your sleep, you want to avoid using it as a sleep aid. You also want to try to develop a relaxing routine before bed that helps you unwind and get ready for rest. Now, symptoms of a medical ailment, such as chronic pain or multiple trips to the restroom overnight, or if those things are disrupting your sleep, it's helpful to discuss this with your providers because they may have some ideas on how to help. Similarly, if you're struggling with insomnia or frequent nightmares, there are specialized mental health treatments to help reduce these symptoms. So it's important that you raise this issue with your providers or during your monitoring visit. So next, we're going to discuss the impact of our diets on cognitive functioning. Food plays an important role in many of our lives, not just for nutrition, but also for enjoyment. Food is often an important part of socialization or a celebration of our culture or holidays. And while food holds many important roles in our lives, what is in our diet also has a significant impact on our cognitive functioning. Foods that are rich in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and healthy fats, such as omega-3s, have been shown to help our brains function well. Inversely, foods that are highly processed or contain high levels of sugar, sodium, and unhealthy fats contribute to inflammation and cognitive decline. So just like with sleep, a poor diet increases the likelihood of developing medical conditions that also have negative impacts on our brains, such as diabetes or hypertension. And they can even increase symptoms of anxiety and depression, which if you were at our previous webinars, you know, is also associated with cognitive difficulties. Now, the good news is that studies have shown that improving diet can improve cognitive functioning. And there's even some studies suggesting it can lower the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So that brings us to what can you do to improve your diet? It's important to avoid highly processed foods and to monitor your intake of foods that are high in sodium, sugar, processed fat, and red meat. Integrating fruits and vegetables into your meals also helps to make sure you're getting the nutrients that you need. I know for many people, particularly if you're really worried about your health or your cognitive functioning, it can be tempting to set a diet plan that's extremely strict and only to have that plan be unattainable. That can either lead to you not making progress in improving your nutrition, or sometimes it can even backfire and lead to the increased consumption of foods that are not good for your brain health. It's setting manageable goals, targeting high impact changes is helpful. So, for example, if you're finding that you're having 2 sodas a day, which we know are quite high in sugar and not good for our brain or our overall health, you could consider swapping out one of those sodas for sparkling water, because even something that small can start to have significant benefits. Or if you really love eating an egg and cheese sandwich in the morning, making that same sandwich for yourself at home is likely to be far lower in sodium and processed foods than if you get it at a fast food chain. Another recommendation we have is to enjoy your food mindfully. So instead of watching television or catching up on work while you eat, try to sit and enjoy your meal so that it's more satisfying. We find that eating mindfully is going to help you notice when you're feeling full versus when you're still feeling hungry. The next thing that I wanted to review today is exercise and cognitive functioning. So it's well documented that regular physical activity, particularly aerobic exercise, lowers the risk for cognitive decline. And sometimes it can even improve cognitive functioning. The CDC recommends at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week for adults, but this does not need to be done all at once. This can even include something like taking a brisk walk several times a week. While at least 150 minutes of exercise per week is ideal, there's evidence that integrating as little as 5 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day can help keep our brains healthy as we age. So even if you start small, it can have real benefits. You're probably noticing a theme throughout this presentation, which is that many lifestyle factors impact our brains both directly and indirectly, and that's also the case for exercise. So of course, it's worth noting that exercising regularly, in addition to having direct benefits for our brain, it also reduces the risk of many other medical and mental health risk factors for cognitive decline, such as diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and depression. So by integrating exercise into your routine, you're targeting multiple risk factors for cognitive decline at once. So again, what can you do? Start by setting a manageable exercise routine. It's common for me to hear from members at our program that due to medical problems, the physical activities they used to enjoy don't feel feasible anymore, or they're afraid that exercising in a particular way might exacerbate their condition. If you have concerns about this, it's important to ask your doctor what types of activities and movements are safe and healthy for you to engage in. There are often modifications that can be made to exercise to keep people active. And remember, even just 5 minutes a day can really create a difference. Another helpful strategy is to get social support for engaging in exercise. It can be really hard to get motivated on a regular basis on your own, but signing up for an exercise class or making a plan to go walking or play basketball with a friend can help keep you engaged. It's also important to try and find an exercise routine that's fun for you. If you hate running, setting a goal to run several times a week is going to be really hard for you to follow through on. So ultimately, it's unlikely to help. But joining a swim class or playing soccer with your grandkids might be something that's fun and keep you active at the same time. The key to increasing your exercise is to find something that's manageable and ideally enjoyable. Next, Dr. Lowe is going to speak about the impact of substance use on cognitive health.
Thank you. Although many substances can affect your brain function, today we're going to focus on tobacco and alcohol because they're the most commonly used substances. As we discussed in our last webinar, and also Dr. McBirney-Goc just mentioned it, people often use substances to unwind and to fall asleep and to cope with difficult feelings. The problem is that over time, even moderate use can harm brain function. It can slow brain processing, it can disrupt your sleep quality, worsen your mood, and unfortunately, it can also put you at risk for developing a dependence on a substance or an addiction. Now, there is good news. And the good news is that if you are able to reduce or eliminate substances, that's going to very quickly improve your clarity, your mood, your ability to sleep. And if you're having difficulty cutting back, if that feels challenging, support is available. So we're going to start with smoking. Now, smoking is strongly linked to many health problems, including cognitive decline. And while nicotine can briefly boost alertness, the effect fades very quickly. And what you end up with is slowing down of your brain functions and impairments of your memory and challenges concentrating. Now, we know that all of these factors that we're talking about today are really important in supporting your cognitive health. However, recent research shows that of all of the lifestyle factors, smoking may be the most harmful for your brain health. So if you're a smoker, this may be the one topic to focus on. Smoking injures the blood vessels that feed the brain and all of our other organs, and it raises the risk for heart and lung disease, cancer, and dementia. So, but it's never too late to reduce or quit smoking. And the health benefits really begin within hours and they continue to benefit you the longer you're able to abstain. Now, one thing to note is that nicotine is highly addictive. It actually has been compared to heroin in its addictive potential. So it is no surprise that it is very challenging to quit. So most people are going to benefit from support. And what's been found to be most effective for quitting smoking is a combination of counseling and medication. And currently we have 7 FDA-approved medications that can be used to help with withdrawal symptoms and cravings. And that makes a big difference in helping people sustain their quit attempts. So if you're considering quitting, our program can help you with that first step. So what can you do today? Well, one thing that you can do is to think about your reason for quitting and write it down. The reasons could be many. Of course, one of them is your health, but it could also be cost. It is extremely expensive to smoke, and consider what you can do with that money instead. There may be other personal reasons or individual reasons for you quitting. I recommend that you actually write them down, have a list, and have that readily available. It really helps with motivation. The other thing that you can do is to contact one of the excellent free smoking cessation resources. The quit lines, the 1-800-QUIT NOW, or the quit text option, which is listed there, offer counseling with coaches that will help you along the way. Some of them are able to offer medication for free. These are available not only free, but they're available in multiple languages and throughout all the states. There are apps. I've noted just one of them, the Quick Start app, that is very helpful. But there are several others that I won't go into, but you can easily look up on the App Store that will help support you as you move along. Now, I do want to acknowledge that people require many efforts in order to be able to quit. Most people are not able to quit on their first, second, third, or maybe even fourth attempt. That's okay. That's actually the rule, not the exception. But every time that you put in the effort to quit, you learn something that you can apply to your next quit attempt. You can learn about, what are your specific triggers? What interventions work best for you in terms of helping you avoid smoking when you have a craving. So there are many, many ways that past attempts can help you in your future quit effort. So do not be discouraged. This is actually the most common thing. And also keep in mind that it's not just quitting. If you're able to actually reduce your smoking, if you were smoking a full pack of cigarettes a day and now are able to cut back to half a pack a day, that is tremendous progress. That has significant health effects, and it's something that should motivate you to keep trying for your next goal. Maybe the next goal will be a quarter pack of cigarettes per day, and you can take it from there. However, you can also ask for a referral to the World Trade Center Smoking Cessation Services. They are available. We can help you with both counseling and medication options. You can easily ask your provider or your case manager for a referral. You can request it during monitoring. And it's really important that you take that step. Remember, you really don't have to do any of this alone. The support makes a difference. Now, next, we're going to take a quick look at alcohol and how it affects both sleep and thinking. So, alcohol affects the brain really quickly, and even small amounts can slow your brain processing and reduce your memory and attention. It interferes with your sleep in a significant way. You end up feeling groggy over time, just constantly fatigued. And although some people take it to reduce stress, over time it actually worsens anxiety and depression. And as if that weren't enough, alcohol actually increases your risk for cancer and cardiovascular disease. Now, a key point is that how much you drink, the amount, and your drinking pattern does make a difference. Binge drinking in particular is particularly dangerous. So keep in mind that even if you're able to have some modest reduction in your use, you're going to find improvements in your overall health fairly quickly. One other thing that I would like to note is that if you do have serious medical conditions or take medications, which just about everyone in our program unfortunately has some condition that requires medication, please speak with your provider. Alcohol can be really detrimental to certain medical conditions, especially those involving the liver. And there are dangerous interactions that can take place between medications and alcohol when you can combine them. So next, we're going to take a look at recommendations for safer drinking if you do drink. So how much is too much alcohol? If you think you may be drinking too much, you probably are. That's kind of my rule. In fact, there is no guaranteed safe amount of alcohol for anyone. Now, if you're a healthy adult and you choose to drink, there are some guidelines by the US government that have been established for what is considered moderate drinking. Staying within these guidelines will help diminish the risk of many of the health problems, but it certainly will not eliminate the risk. So for men, moderate drinking is considered 2 standard drinks or less in a day, or less than 14 within a week. For women, that is 1 standard drink or less in a day and less than 7 drinks in a week. And the difference between men and women has to do with the size of the liver and its ability to metabolize the ingredients in alcohol. Many people don't realize what a standard drink is, and people may fill up their wine glass and think, I'm just having 1 drink. Actually, that's at least 2. 5 ounces of wine is what's considered a standard drink. So it's important to keep in mind those numbers. However, numbers are only useful if they actually help you guide action. So here are some simple steps that you can try. So what can you do? Well, pick 1 change. You can track your alcohol use, write things down, and make a plan. A plan could be something like establishing a weekly cap for yourself, having some alcohol-free nights, substituting a ritual when you have a craving for to drink. So for example, if you tend to have a drink or 2 in the evening or on the weekends, think about something that you can substitute. Go for a walk for 20 minutes. Walk your dog. That's usually very pleasurable. Even better, go for a walk with your friend and your dog. Staying engaged with others and being physically active is one way that you can minimize the amount of drinking. Now, make sure that you have some of these substitute rituals written down. You don't want to have to try to come up with them when you're having a craving. It's something that you should think about ahead of time. Maybe even tell your partner or family member, a friend, and they can help support you in reducing. Another thing that you can do is to connect with support. There are many peer support programs that people have found very useful. And you can choose what fits. There are 12-step programs like AA that focus on abstinence. There are also programs called Smart Recovery. You can find these online very easily. And their focus is more on harm reduction, that is, reducing any drinking. That is considered progress. There are also plenty of community groups and faith groups that will have meetings to help support individuals who are trying to cut back. Now, if quitting or cutting back feels challenging, you can also ask for a World Trade Center Health Program referral to connect you with resources. Again, just ask your provider, ask your case manager, call the number we have on the screen and ask to speak with a social worker who will also help guide you. Together, we can talk through a plan that is going to be effective. So right now, I am going to turn it back to Dr. McBirney-Goc, who's going to speak about one of the last factors that we're talking about today, and that is the importance of socializing, staying cognitively engaged, and how that is important for your brain. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. So we're going to talk about socialization and cognitive engagement together as they tend to interact, although they are sort of distinct concepts. Social isolation and a lack of regular cognitive engagement are both associated with higher rates of cognitive decline. You might be wondering what we mean by cognitive engagement. It's really just sort of a fancy way of referring to things that require mental effort and focus. So things such as reading, learning something new, working on a puzzle, trying to figure out a problem, or even having an engaging conversation or a debate with someone. These are all examples of cognitive engagement, when our brains are kind of active in processing, information. Now, there are a variety of factors that can lead to increased isolation from other people and a reduction in cognitive engagement over time. And it is common for us to hear that when people are getting more isolated from others, that also their engagement in sort of cognitive activities or intellectual discussion also goes down. So they tend to move hand in hand. Life transitions such as retirement, divorce, or relocating to a new home can disconnect us from our social network and activities that we once relied on. I think that retirement is always a good example. It's pretty common for people to be excited about their retirement, often for good reason, but then they find actually that a lot of their social network or the people they would see during the day were connected to work, and that actually takes more effort to connect with people when you're not seeing them every day. Or a lot of people's jobs require a certain amount of cognitive engagement that's integrated into their daily lives without them really having to think about it. And then once they retire, that's not there, and it sort of needs to be replaced if we want to stay engaged and protect our brains. Mental health conditions such as depression and PTSD can also increase social isolation and make it hard to stay cognitively engaged. They're associated with becoming more withdrawn and sometimes even avoiding social interactions altogether. Similarly, chronic health conditions can make it more challenging to get out and engage with others. Although at times it can be challenging to build and maintain social connections, it's well worth the effort. Adults who remain active and engaged with others report being happier and healthier overall, and they report feeling more cognitively sharp. It's also very common that as we become more isolated, our levels of cognitive engagement go down. So there can be this tendency to engage in more passive activities that aren't particularly cognitive engaging. So things like maybe kind of just sort of channel surfing or watching television, maybe not even in such a focused way, or scrolling a bit mindlessly on our phones. These things don't really activate our brains in a powerful way. And so doing that as opposed to something that is more engaging is associated with greater risks for cognitive impairment. When we increase our engagement in activities that require cognitive efforts, it's good for the health of our brains. And it's even better if we combine it with socialization, because then we're reducing our social isolation and we're finding ways of keeping our brains active. So that takes us to, what can you do? How do we put some of these changes into practice? Now, there are many ways to increase your socialization. And sometimes this can be as straightforward as increasing your efforts to spend time with friends and family, maybe making efforts to sort of more actively set up visits, or times even spending time on the phone if you can't see somebody in person counts. If you're finding it's hard to form connections, seeking out more structured activities for connecting with others can be a really helpful strategy. For example, you can seek out volunteer opportunities that are of interest to you. You can sign up for an in-person class, or you can even participate in group therapy. There are also many different ways of increasing your cognitive engagement. The trick to it is to find sources of cognitive engagement that you will find enjoyable and fulfilling. If it's something that's fun and of interest to you, it's going to be much easier for you to keep up with than if it's something that feels like a chore. Now, that what that thing is really going to depend on you and your personality and your interests. For some people, that might be reading a book or playing Sudoku in the evening instead of scrolling on their phones. Other individuals may find that they like practicing an instrument or working on repairing cars. Everyone here today is engaging in some form of cognitive engagement by joining the webinar. So it could be things like signing up for webinars or trying to learn about something new that's of interest. As I alluded to before, it can be incredibly helpful to combine socialization and cognitive engagement. It tends to increase motivation and it helps target multiple protective factors at once. So for example, playing chess on the computer is good. That's a great form of cognitive engagement. If you have a choice between playing chess on your computer or scrolling on your phone, playing chess on the computer is going to be much better for your brain. But playing chess with a friend is even better. Setting up a day where you're going to meet up and play chess together, you're going to get the benefits of cognitively engaging through the chess game. You're also going to get the benefits of socializing and spending time with another person while you do it. And so it's likely to be more enjoyable. And you're also, again, you're targeting multiple risk factors for cognitive difficulty at the same time. And that sort of ties us into this next slide, where I really want to start connecting, the three different topics that we've covered over the course of this webinar series, and really start to highlight how targeting one risk factor can help target multiple, especially if we approach it a bit strategically. So this chart highlights how the three topics we've covered, including medical conditions, mental health conditions, and lifestyle factors, all interact with one another and can contribute to cognitive difficulties, but it can also contribute to one another. When we're managing challenging medical conditions, it can leave us feeling depressed or anxious. And of course, we know feeling depressed and anxious can actually make it harder to follow through on the treatment plans for our medical conditions. When we're feeling physically or psychologically unwell, it's easy to slip into lifestyle habits that aren't good for us, like drinking more or becoming socially withdrawn. And this in turn can worsen our psychological and medical well-being. And of course, all of these categories in their own way contribute to cognitive difficulties if they're not adequately addressed. Now, the good news is that by targeting one of these categories, it can actually help to target the others and make them more manageable. For example, improving your sleep hygiene or increasing your exercise will be both good for your brain directly, but it's also going to be good for your physical and mental health. And we know that improvements to physical and mental health are also good for your brain. So rather than getting discouraged by feeling like you have too many risk factors, think about a goal that feels manageable and could help target multiple risk factors at once. Now, some of these changes that we've been talking about, you can make by yourself, and hopefully you have some ideas of things that you can start doing on your own. But there are also many ways that the World Trade Center Health Program care teams can help. Our program's mental health team, physical health team, and case managers can all help you make lifestyle changes that are good for your cognitive and overall well-being, and they can be matched based on your particular needs. We're all here to work together to support your cognitive wellness. So we've covered a lot of information about risk factors and ways to promote cognitive health, but this information is really only helpful if we have a manageable way to put this information into practice. Those of you who also attended our last two webinars will have some familiarity with the SMART goal framework, which is a helpful tool for setting goals that we can actually follow through on. So to that end, for some, this will be a review. For some, this might be some new information on what is a SMART goal framework. So starting too big in general with goals can actually be counterproductive by leaving us feeling hopeless and overwhelmed. So we recommend using the SMART goal framework to help us make the goals more bite-sized and achievable. Once you've completed a SMART goal, you can either extend it or revise it to take the next step. If you didn't achieve the SMART goal, that can be informative and helpful. So take some time to troubleshoot what went wrong, and you can revise the goal and try again. So when we're talking about SMART goals, what are we talking about? The S is for specific. You want to be really specific about what you want to achieve. It's very easy to make a general goal. You really want it to have the more specific, the easier it's actually going to be to do. You want it to be measurable. You want to have some way of saying, I would know how to check off a box to say that I've done this. You want it to be achievable. Now, achievable can refer to a couple of things. One of them is, how am I going to do this? What supports or tools am I going to put in place to help me achieve this goal? But it also ties back to measurable. If your goal is too extreme and big, what you're trying to achieve, then it's going to be hard to do. So you want to give yourself some wiggle room. The R is for relevant. It needs to seem worthwhile to you. It doesn't need to be worthwhile to anybody so much as it does to you, because that's where your motivation is going to be to follow through on it. And we want it to be time bound. We want to think about, when are we going to start this goal? When are we going to sort of end, so we know the time frame we're measuring in? And you can always extend it later, but you don't want it to be something like, I'll do this someday, or I'm going to do this forever. We want to be a little more specific about the time frame. So let's go over an example. Let's say that someone regularly eats out and has a lot of processed high sodium foods. And so their goal is, I will eat healthier. Now, the idea here is good, but the goal is pretty vague, and it's not clear how they're going to measure or achieve it. So let's try and translate that into a SMART goal. First, we want to make it more specific. So I will reduce my fast food consumption. That's much more specific than just, I'm going to eat healthier. We want it to be something we can measure. So I'm going to say, by not having fast food for breakfast more than one time per week. Now, I'm also getting at achievable here. Notice I didn't say I'm never going to have fast food. I'm giving myself 1 day a week so that I feel like I have a little bit of wiggle room, so it's still attainable but impactful. So that's part of achievable, but I'm also going to put a plan in place to help me do it. So maybe I tend to rush out of the door early in the mornings when I have a meeting. So I'm going to say I'm going to prepare overnight oats the evening before my early meetings, so I have food ready, I can grab it, and then I'm not stuck sort of running through a fast food restaurant to get my breakfast. Relevant. Maybe this is meaningful to me because I know it's going to help my cognitive abilities, and I've also been worried about my blood pressure, and I know reducing my fast food intake can help with that. And time bound. I'm going to do this for the next 4 weeks starting on Wednesday. So I know exactly when I'm starting it. And I know that I'm going to do it for 4 weeks. So at the end of that 4 weeks, I can sort of check off, did I do what I was trying to do? And if I did, I can extend it, or, maybe there's something I want to add on to it. And if I didn't achieve it, it gives me a chance to troubleshoot what went wrong, so I can figure out a different strategy and try again. So we can try another. I will exercise more often. I bet a lot of us say that all the time, but it lacks a specific plan, which makes it hard to follow through on. So we can make that more specific. I'm going to go on a brisk walk. I'm being more specific about what I'm going to do. Measurable. I'm going to go for 30 minutes 3 times per week. I'm not saying that I'm going to be at the gym for 2 hours every day. That's not going to be achievable, but I'm going to start with 30 minutes 3 times a week. Maybe sounds reasonable, achievable. And maybe part of how I'm going to achieve it is I know my friend Joe walks in the morning in the park, and I'm going to ask him if I can join, because then I've got some accountability and motivation to get up and out. Relevant, I can say this is going to improve my physical health and my mood and give me a chance to see my friend. And time bound, I'm going to do this for 1 month starting the first week of September. Now, one of the things that I want to highlight about this SMART goal is it's actually one specific thing that's going to target multiple risk factors, which is really something that's great to go for. It's going to increase my exercise. If I'm planning to do it by going on the walk with my friend, it's going to also reduce my social isolation. It's going to get me, connected with my friend again. If I'm having a nice talk with him as well, that actually might help target cognitive engagement if we're having an interesting conversation about something important to us. And of course, walking is good for physical and mental health. Which is something else that's protective for our brain. So I just want to highlight that as an example of how you can have one very specific goal and have it target multiple risk factors at once, and that way really have a good impact on your brain. So just for a moment, if people want to grab something to jot down a note to themselves with, we would love it if everybody left here today with at least one idea of a goal that they can work on that feels manageable and meaningful to them. So I'm going to very briefly pause and give people a chance to jot down something, an idea for a SMART goal, something that feels important and manageable, that they might want to change about their lifestyle to enhance their cognitive health. So for the sake of us getting through the rest of the information we want to share, I'm going to move on, but hopefully you jotted something down. And after today, try to revise it and make it something that you feel like you can follow through on. Now, as a brief recap on what we've covered today, sleeping well, moving daily, cutting back on substances, and increasing social and cognitive engagement can all help enhance your brain health. These will likely feel like too much to be able to address at once, and it's okay to start with one and build from there. As we come toward the end of our series on cognitive health, I'll pass it back to Dr. Lowe, who will provide an overview of how this all fits together.
Thank you. We hope that you have found this series helpful. Remember that they were created for 9/11 responders, many of whom continue to live with chronic health conditions that affect cognitive health in many different ways. Across the 3 webinars, we looked at physical health and how treating issues like sleep apnea, high blood pressure, and asthma protects your brain. In the second, we explored how chronic stress, untreated PTSD, or depression can take a significant toll on your brain health. And today we just spoke about the lifestyle choices and how small changes can protect your brain health. Our goal was simple. It was to show how all of these areas work together and to offer practical advice that you can use right away. Remember, we are the sum of our actions, not the sum of our ultimate goals. So caring for your brain, caring for your body, and making thoughtful choices every day adds up. So be an active partner in your care. Share your concerns with all of your providers. Set one SMART goal. Hopefully you will have been able to choose one from the many that we offer today. Take one small step today. There is so much to gain from doing so. Now, before we close, I do want to personally invite you to our next webinar. So please join us on September 11th, where we will be gathering to remember and heal together. September 11th is a date that has many meanings to all of us, and it is a time that we commemorate something that we all have in common, the 9/11 experience. So that webinar will be a time to reflect together, to practice some mindfulness techniques, and to offer support. Hopefully you'll be able to take some tools from that webinar that will allow you to uh, process that day a little bit better, but also that you take with you at any point where you're feeling stressed or down. You can register using the QR code, or please contact the program for more information on getting the link. I do want to also note that social workers will be available on site and by phone. On site, our social workers will be available at the Annenberg location in the Manhattan CCE. And they will help guide you towards any resources that might be helpful. So let me just take some time to share some contact information. First of all, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for everything that you've done and that you've carried since 9/11. Keep in mind that whether you're experiencing stress or memory changes or any other challenges, we're here to help. You'll see our contact numbers on the screen and in the chat. And we've also dropped a link for a brief 6-item survey in the chat. We would love to hear your thoughts. I know we only have just a couple of minutes left, but we will take a couple of minutes to answer any questions that you may have.
I see there's one if there's particular exercises that you can do to help with your cognitive health. I'm understanding that's sort of like cognitive exercises or cognitive engagement. There are lots of apps that you'll find online that they'll sort of advertise as helping with brain health. And if that's of interest, certainly those are accessible, but I would really find something that you enjoy that engages your brain. I don't think it needs to be something specifically like an app built to exercise your brain most often, but really something if you find it keeps your mind active, it requires focus, it really requires your thinking, that's actually really good for your brain. So like I said, that could be chess, that could be a puzzle, that could be debating an important topic with a friend, but something that requires your sustained attention.
Likewise, there is a question about particular diet. Now, there's been a lot of research on the Mediterranean diet and how it can be helpful for overall health, including cognitive health. But essentially, it is having a well-balanced diet that is not ultra-processed and doing that every day. It's what we do every day that in the end makes a difference. So with that, we are going to close here. Thank you to my colleague, Dr. McBirney-Goc, once again for sharing in these series, and thank you all for participating.